Did someone let the help into the gala? Millionaire Devon Cross's cruel laughter filled the ballroom as his designer-clad companions pointed at Sage's modest navy dress. What they didn't know was that in less than an hour, they'd all be working for her. The Grand Metropolitan Charity Gala was the crown jewel of the city's social calendar, an annual spectacle where the wealthy elite gathered under the noble guise of philanthropy, while primarily showcasing their own magnificent wealth and superior social standing. Crystal chandeliers worth more than most people's annual salaries cast brilliant golden light across marble floors so perfectly polished they reflected the designer gowns like gleaming mirrors. The air itself seemed to hum with conversations conducted in the universal language of privilege. Subtle boasts carefully disguised as casual observations, strategic networking expertly masked as friendly chatter, and the constant, unspoken competition to demonstrate exactly who belonged at the very apex of society's rigid pyramid. In the center of this glittering theatrical display stood Sage Williams, a remarkable 34-year-old black woman whose quiet presence seemed to create a peaceful bubble of calm dignity in the swirling chaos of extravagant wealth and desperate social positioning. Her navy blue dress, with its crisp white collar and carefully placed pearl buttons, was an absolute masterclass in understated elegance and professional sophistication. The fabric was quality wool crepe, the cut was impeccably tailored, and the overall effect was both beautifully professional and appropriately sophisticated for any formal occasion. But in a room where excessive luxury was not just accepted but absolutely demanded as proof of worthiness, her tasteful restraint made her stand out like a whispered prayer of dignity in a heavy metal concert of materialism. Devon Cross spotted her immediately from across the expansive ballroom, and his predatory social instincts activated with the precision of a heat-seeking missile. At 45 years old, Devon had built his considerable fortune through a carefully calculated combination of inherited family wealth, aggressively ruthless business tactics, and an almost supernatural ability to read social situations to his maximum advantage in any room he entered. His custom-tailored tuxedo fit his frame like a perfectly crafted second skin. His expensive Rolex caught the brilliant chandelier light with every calculated gesture he made, and his practiced smile had been perfected through decades of charming his way through business deals that lesser men would have lost, based purely on merit and competence alone. But perhaps his greatest social asset was his carefully curated entourage, a strategically assembled collection of stunning socialites whose exceptional beauty, powerful family connections, and eager willingness to laugh appreciatively at his every joke made him feel like the undisputed king of any room he graced with his presence. Bianca Sterling stood positioned to his right like a gorgeous statue, her pink silk gown cut daringly low and adorned with enough sparkling diamonds to fund a small developing nation's entire education budget for several years. At just 28 years old, she had already perfected the complex art of being professionally beautiful. Her entire carefully constructed existence revolved around being seen at exactly the right exclusive events, wearing precisely the right prestigious designers, and saying exactly the right, socially appropriate things to maintain her elevated position in the upper echelons of high society's demanding hierarchy. Veronica Chase occupied the strategic space to Devon's left, her stunning emerald green dress serving as a glittering testament to both her husbands' remarkable success in pharmaceutical investments and her own exceptional skill at transforming raw wealth into valuable social capital and influential connections. She had been expertly playing the intricate society game for over a decade, moving through exclusive charitable boards and members-only clubs with the calculated precision of a chess. Grandmaster planning moves several steps ahead. "Ladies," Devon announced with theatrical flair, his voice carefully pitched to carry just enough volume to ensure that nearby guests could hear his anticipated pearls of wisdom. "I believe we might have quite an interesting situation developing right here in our midst." His perfectly manicured finger pointed discreetly toward Sage, who was standing peacefully by the silent auction display, apparently completely absorbed in carefully reading about the various expensive items up for competitive bidding. Her posture was absolutely perfect, her expression remained serenely calm, and her complete apparent lack of awareness regarding the social storm brewing ominously around her made her an even more appealing target for Devon's particular brand of cruel entertainment. Someone clearly didn't receive the important memo about tonight's strict dress code requirements, Bianca observed with practiced theatrical delight, following his pointed gaze with growing excitement. "Do you think she might be lost?" Veronica leaned in conspiratorially, her voice pitched at that perfect social level that suggested intimate conversation while ensuring maximum audibility for strategic eavesdropping. Perhaps she was looking for the community center down the street, and accidentally wandered into the completely wrong building by mistake. The cruel trio burst into appreciative laughter, their collective amusement proving infectious enough to draw uncertain glances from the surrounding guests. Some smiled hesitantly, not entirely sure what the joke was about but completely unwilling to risk being excluded from Devon's powerful inner circle. Others frowned slightly with growing discomfort, sensing something distinctly unpleasant developing in the air but unable to pinpoint its exact source or nature. Devon's natural confidence grew exponentially with the positive attention he was receiving from his appreciative audience. He had always been exceptionally skilled at reading rooms accurately, at understanding exactly how far he could push social boundaries, before serious consequences materialized to threaten his position. Tonight, surrounded by people who depended entirely on his continued goodwill for their own social standing and financial security, those boundaries felt particularly generous and forgiving. "I have to say," he continued with growing enthusiasm, warming considerably to his developing theme, "I genuinely admire her remarkable confidence. It takes absolutely real courage to show up to an exclusive event like this looking so dramatically ... underdressed. Some people might call it completely inappropriate, but I think we should definitely appreciate the sheer boldness of the attempt." Sage heard absolutely every word, of course. The ballroom's carefully designed acoustics were specifically engineered to carry sound clearly throughout the space, and Devon's voice had been deliberately projected to ensure maximum impact and audience engagement. She had encountered this exact type of behavior many times before, the automatic assumption that her personal worth could be accurately measured by her wardrobe choices, the deeply ingrained belief that respect was something earned exclusively through conspicuous consumption rather than character, achievement, or genuine contributions to society. But tonight was fundamentally different from all those previous encounters. Tonight, she wasn't just an innocent bystander accidentally caught in someone else's cruel social game. Tonight, she was actually the master architect of Devon Cross's complete and total downfall, though he had absolutely no idea that his ultimate fate had already been permanently sealed by strategic decisions, made in exclusive boardrooms he would never see by influential people whose names he would never know, following a carefully crafted plan he couldn't begin to comprehend or imagine. Devon's natural boldness increased dramatically with the enthusiastic positive response from his growing audience. He straightened his expensive bow tie with practiced theatrical flair, a perfectly rehearsed gesture he developed over years to signal the imminent arrival of a particularly cutting observation, and took a deliberate step toward Sage with the calculated stride of an experienced predator confidently approaching his selected prey. "Excuse me," he called out loudly, his voice now carrying enough volume to command the immediate attention of everyone in their expanding vicinity. "I think there might be some serious confusion happening here tonight." Sage turned slowly and gracefully, her movements controlled and elegant. When her intelligent eyes met Devon's confident gaze, there was something profound in her steady look, a deep stillness that spoke of vast hidden depths and unshakable inner strength, that should have served as a clear warning that he was swimming in extremely dangerous territory. But Devon had spent his entire adult life consistently mistaking the absence of immediate resistance for weakness and submission, and tonight would prove no different from his established pattern. "I'm sorry?" Sage replied with genuine warmth, her voice carrying a natural grace that contrasted sharply with the cold, cruel laughter still echoing mockingly around them. "Well, you see, this happens to be a rather exclusive charitable event," Devon explained with exaggerated patience, using the tone someone might employ when addressing a confused child who had wandered into an adult conversation. "And I couldn't help but notice that your current attire doesn't quite match the sophisticated occasion we're celebrating tonight." The formal invitation clearly specified black tie formal dress as the required standard. He gestured broadly and dramatically at her modest outfit, making absolutely certain that everyone present could see exactly what he found so objectionable and inappropriate. "I'm genuinely wondering if perhaps you're here tonight in some sort of professional capacity that would explain this discrepancy? Catering staff, event coordination, security personnel?" The devastating implication hung in the air like toxic poison gas, seeping insidiously into every nearby conversation and contaminating every social in around them. The suggestion wasn't merely that Sage was inappropriately dressed for the occasion. It was the far more damaging insinuation that she was inappropriately present in this exclusive space. That someone exactly like her couldn't possibly belong among people exactly like them, unless she was being paid specifically to serve their needs and desires. Devin, you're so incredibly observant. Bianca gasped with theatrical delight, covering her mouth dramatically with her jeweled fingers. I was wondering exactly the same thing, but I didn't want to say anything directly and cause embarrassment. That would certainly explain the unusual wardrobe choice. Veronica nodded sagely, as if Devin had made a brilliant deductive observation worthy of Sherlock Holmes. Service uniforms typically don't run toward formal evening wear, do they? The breathtaking cruelty of their casual assumptions was absolutely stunning in its confident certainty. They had looked directly at a well-dressed, clearly articulate black woman and immediately concluded without question that she must be working the event rather than attending it, that her very presence in this exclusive space required detailed explanation and complete justification in ways that their own presence never would. What Devin Cross didn't know, what he couldn't possibly have known without the kind of detailed financial investigation that his enormous pride would never have allowed him to conduct, was that Sage Williams had been systematically studying cross-tech solutions for nearly an entire year. Despite the company's carefully maintained public facade of continued success and innovation, it was actually hemorrhaging money at absolutely alarming rates that would terrify anyone with genuine business acumen and financial understanding. The company's numerous problems were multifaceted and deeply rooted in Devin's particular leadership style and personal character flaws. He had consistently prioritized flashy marketing campaigns over actual product development, systematically alienated key clients through his arrogant and condescending negotiation tactics, and made a series of expensive acquisitions that sounded impressive in press releases, but had actually saddled the company with enormous debt and consistently underperforming assets that drained resources. Even more financially damaging was Devin's deeply personal relationship with the company's finances and resources. He had been regularly using corporate funds to support his lavish personal lifestyle for years, justifying these inappropriate expenses as necessary business costs, while knowing perfectly well that he was systematically bleeding the company dry to maintain his elevated position in society circles exactly like the one surrounding him tonight. Sage had identified Crosstech as a perfect target 6 months ago, recognizing it as exactly the kind of opportunity that Meridian Capital specialized in acquiring fundamentally sound businesses with good underlying potential being systematically destroyed by completely incompetent leadership, making them ripe for strategic acquisition and comprehensive restructuring under competent management. The acquisition process had been methodical, precise, and completely invisible to Devin and his advisors. Through an intricate network of shell companies and carefully selected intermediary firms, Meridian had systematically purchased Crosstech's outstanding debt from banks and creditors, who were growing increasingly nervous about the company's ability to meet its financial obligations. The individual purchases had been strategically small enough to avoid attracting attention, but large enough to accumulate genuine power and control. By the time Devin finally realized what was happening, if he ever realized what was happening at all, Sage would control enough of his company's financial obligations to dictate terms that would leave him with absolutely no options beyond complete capitulation or total bankruptcy. But the evening's most deliciously ironic twist was standing right in front of him, hidden in plain sight like a perfectly crafted riddle that he was completely incapable of solving. Devin's company had made a very public commitment to donate exactly $2 million to the educational initiative being celebrated tonight, a generous pledge that had generated significant positive press coverage and had been a key component of Crosstech's recent public relations campaign to improve its image, following several embarrassing product failures and high-profile client losses. The only significant problem was that Devin had already spent that $2 million on personal expenses, the kind of lifestyle, maintenance that his elevated social position required but that his company's actual financial condition could no longer realistically support without serious consequences. The charitable check was going to bounce spectacularly. The resulting scandal would be immediate, devastating, and impossible to contain or minimize. And when it did, Meridian Capital would be perfectly positioned to swoop in with an acquisition offer that Devin would have absolutely no choice but to accept, assuming he wanted to avoid serious criminal charges for fraud and embezzlement. I received my formal invitation just like everyone else here tonight, Sage said with perfect calm. Mr. Cross, Devin Cross of Cross Tech Solutions. He delivered his name with the practiced flourishes of someone completely accustomed to immediate recognition and automatic deference from everyone he encountered. And you are? Sage Williams. Devin's eyebrows rose with theatrical surprise. Williams? Are you perhaps related to the Williams family that handles catering services for these types of exclusive events? That would certainly clear up any confusion about how you gained access to tonight's gathering. The loaded question revealed absolutely everything about Devin's narrow worldview and deeply ingrained prejudices. In his rigidly structured universe, there was only one logical reason a black woman with a common surname would be present at an elite charitable gathering. She must be connected to the service industry in some capacity. The possibility that she belonged there based entirely on her own merit and achievements was literally unthinkable to him. No, Mr. Cross, I'm not in the catering business, Sage replied with the same steady calm she had maintained throughout the increasingly hostile exchange. Then what exactly do you do, Sage? He pronounced her name like it was a question rather than a statement, as if even her basic right to possess a professional identity was subject to his personal approval and verification. I work in investments and acquisitions. Devin's explosive laughter erupted from him like a champagne cork under pressure. Investments? Oh, that's absolutely precious. Let me take a wild guess. You help ordinary people invest their grocery money? Maybe you work at one of those payday loan establishments? His appreciative entourage erupted in delighted giggles, performing enthusiastically for an increasingly large audience as other guests continued drifting closer, drawn irresistibly by the unfolding spectacle like moths to a particularly bright flame. Actually, Sage said quietly but clearly, I specialize in corporate acquisitions, hostile takeovers, and comprehensive debt restructuring. The precise words cut through the cruel laughter like a razor-sharp sword slicing through delicate silk. For just a brief moment, Devin's confident expression wavered noticeably, replaced by something that might have been genuine uncertainty or growing concern. Hostile takeovers? He repeated slowly, his voice now carrying a distinct note of skepticism that hadn't been present before. Sweetheart, I don't know what kind of elaborate game you think you're playing here, but hostile takeovers require serious capital. The kind of massive money that comes with serious connections, serious backing, serious everything. He gestured grandly at his beautiful companions like a skilled magician directing audience attention to his glamorous assistants. These ladies understand how this exclusive world really works. They've been integral parts of it since birth. They know exactly what it takes to play successfully at this level. You're clearly operating under some fundamental misconceptions about where you fit in the established food chain. Mr. Cross, Sage said, her voice maintaining that same unflappable calm that had characterized all her responses throughout the increasingly hostile exchange. May I ask you something directly? Devin spread his arms wide in a gesture of magnanimous indulgence, clearly delighted by what he confidently assumed would be another perfect opportunity to demonstrate his superior knowledge of the business world to his growing audience. Of course, ask away freely. I'm always happy to educate someone who's genuinely interested in learning how things really work at this level. How is Crosstech's current financial position these days? The direct question hit Devin like a bucket of ice-cold water thrown directly in his face. His confident smile faltered noticeably, though he recovered quickly enough that most casual observers wouldn't have noticed the momentary lapse in his carefully maintained composure. We're doing absolutely fantastic, actually. Better than we've ever been. Why do you ask such a specific question? Oh, just natural curiosity. I've been casually following the company's performance recently, and some of the key indicators seemed rather concerning to experienced investors. Devin's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, a subtle physical tell that revealed his growing discomfort. I'm not sure exactly where you're getting your information, but Crosstech is solid as a rock. We're actively expanding into promising new markets, launching genuinely innovative products, and leading our entire industry in both growth and profitability. Really? Because from what I've observed through careful analysis, you've had 3 major product failures in just the past 8 months, lost valuable contracts with your 2 largest clients, and seen your stock price decline by nearly 40% since the beginning of the current fiscal year. The socialites' appreciative laughter died away completely as they sensed a fundamental shift in the conversation's tone and direction. Even they could recognize that the dynamic had changed dramatically, though they weren't quite sure how or why this transformation had occurred so suddenly. Devon's face began flushing noticeably, though whether from anger or embarrassment wasn't immediately clear to observers. "Who exactly are you?" he demanded, his voice now carrying a sharp edge that hadn't been present before. "I mean, who are you really?" "I told you clearly, Sage Williams, I work in investments." "No, I mean, who are you really? What specific company do you work for? Where exactly are you getting this detailed information about my business?" Sage paused deliberately, allowing the tension to build naturally throughout the immediate area. Around them, the conversation had drawn an increasingly large crowd of curious onlookers. She could easily identify familiar faces in the growing group: the mayor, several city council members, the Chamber of Commerce president, and at least 3 reporters who regularly covered the local business community for major publications. "I work for Meridian Capital." The company name hit Devon like a devastating physical blow to his solar plexus. Meridian Capital wasn't just another investment firm among many. It was the mysterious entity that had been systematically acquiring Crosstech's debt over the past several months. Devon's expensive lawyers and financial advisors had been tracking these strategic purchases with growing alarm. But they had been completely unable to identify the ultimate controlling interest or negotiate any kind of favorable restructuring agreement. "Meridian?" His voice cracked slightly on the name. "You work for Meridian Capital?" "I don't work for Meridian Capital, Mr. Cross." Sage's voice remained perfectly level, betraying absolutely none of the satisfaction she must have felt as the carefully planned trap finally closed around its intended target. "I founded Meridian Capital 5 years ago. I own Meridian Capital completely. And as of yesterday afternoon, Meridian Capital owns 67% of Crosstech's total outstanding debt obligations." The silence that followed was so complete and profound that the sound of Devon's expensive champagne glass slipping from his suddenly nerveless fingers and shattering dramatically on the polished marble floor seemed as loud as a gunshot echoing through a cathedral. Crystal fragments scattered across the mirror-like surface, catching the brilliant light from the chandeliers like tiny stars falling to earth in a miniature cosmic disaster. "That's completely impossible," Devon whispered desperately, but his voice utterly lacked conviction. Even as he spoke the words, he could see the undeniable truth written clearly in Sage's calm expression, in the sudden focused attention of the surrounding crowd, and in the way his own loyal entourage had begun backing away from him as if mere proximity might prove socially contagious. "Is it really? Why don't you call your expensive legal team first thing tomorrow morning and ask them directly who holds the controlling interest in your company's financial obligations? Ask them specifically who has the power to restructure your payment schedules, modify your interest rates, or accelerate your debt timelines according to the original contract terms. Ask them who could force Crosstech into bankruptcy proceedings with a single strategic decision." He stepped away from the group to take the urgent call privately. The conversation was brief and absolutely devastating in its implications. His lawyer had been closely monitoring the rapidly developing situation throughout the evening, and recent developments had triggered a cascade of legal and financial obligations that required immediate executive attention and decision-making. The debt restructuring that Devon had been desperately hoping to negotiate was no longer available as an option. Meridian Capital had exercised its contractual option to accelerate all outstanding obligations, which meant that Crosstech now owed approximately $47 million in various forms of debt, with all amounts due within the next 30 days. When Devon returned to the group with shaking hands, his face had gone completely white as if all blood had drained from his features. Sage was now surrounded by some of the most important and influential people at the entire gala, all of whom were treating her with the kind of profound deference and genuine respect that Devon had foolishly assumed was his exclusive privilege and birthright. "Miss Williams, I had absolutely no idea you would be joining us tonight," Mayor Richardson declared while shaking her hand with obvious enthusiasm. "Meridian Capital's continued support has been absolutely crucial to our economic development initiatives throughout the region." "Thank you so much, Mayor Richardson. I believe strongly in investing in communities that demonstrate they're willing to invest seriously in themselves." The president of First National Bank eagerly joined the important conversation. "Sage, I've been hoping we could schedule some dedicated time to discuss the infrastructure financing package in detail. Your insights on public-private partnerships have been absolutely invaluable to our planning process. Of course, James, please have your people call my office early next week to coordinate schedules. A prominent city councilwoman approached the growing group with obvious excitement. Miss Williams, I wanted to thank you personally for your foundation's generous support of our youth employment program. The actual results have exceeded every single projection we made. Devin stood frozen at the edge of this powerful circle, watching his absolute worst nightmare unfold with horrifying clarity. Sage wasn't just accepted by these influential people, she was clearly one of the most important and respected figures in the entire room. Business leaders actively sought her professional opinion, politicians courted her valuable support, and community leaders thanked her genuinely for her meaningful contributions to their causes. When Devin finally worked up the courage to approach Sage again, she was surrounded by an impressive group that included the mayor, 2 city council members, the chamber president, and several other prominent business leaders who wielded real influence in the community. Miss Williams, he began hesitantly, his voice now carrying unmistakable notes of desperation, I wonder if we might speak privately for just a moment. The distinguished group turned to look at him with expressions ranging from mild curiosity to open hostility. His reputation from the evening's events had preceded him, and not in any positive way. I'm quite busy at the moment, Mr. Cross. Perhaps your lawyers can contact my lawyers directly if there's something that requires professional discussion. Please, Devin said, his voice now audibly desperate to everyone present. I think there's been a serious misunderstanding about tonight's conversation. Sage studied him for a long moment, her expression remaining neutral but not entirely unkind. What kind of misunderstanding, Mr. Cross? I may have made certain assumptions earlier that were ... incorrect. I sincerely apologize if anything I said was inappropriate or offensive. You apologize if it was inappropriate? Sage repeated carefully, her voice carrying just enough emphasis to highlight the conditional nature of his inadequate statement. Mr. Cross, let me be absolutely clear about what happened here tonight. You saw a black woman in a modest dress and immediately assumed she was service staff. You then proceeded to mock and humiliate her in front of a room full of people, using her appearance the sole basis for judging her worth and belonging. The crowd had grown significantly larger, drawn by the unfolding drama. Devin could feel the crushing weight of their collective attention, the harsh judgment in their eyes, and the way his words and actions were being permanently recorded in their memories for future reference and discussion. Your behavior tonight wasn't an unfortunate aberration, Mr. Cross. It was a perfect demonstration of the management philosophy that has been systematically destroying your company from the inside out. You judge by appearances rather than substance, dismiss voices that don't fit your preconceptions, and mistake cruelty for cleverness. The devastating truth of her words hit Devin like a series of physical blows. Every failed product launch, every lost client, every strategic disaster of the past 2 years could be directly traced to those same fundamental character flaws that had led him to humiliate her tonight. Crosstech will indeed survive and thrive, Sage continued with quiet authority, but under completely new leadership. Leadership that understands a company's true value lies not in the bank accounts of its executives, but in the talent and dedication of its employees and the loyalty of its customers. As Sage collected her simple evening purse, preparing to leave for the important board meeting about Crosstech's future, Devin called out with complete desperation. What would it take? What would I need to do to make this right? Sage paused and turned back one final time. Mr. Cross, do you see this dress? She gestured to her navy blue outfit. I chose to wear this tonight for one very specific reason. I wanted to see who in this room would judge me by my character rather than my costume. You failed that test completely and devastatingly. The crowd was completely silent, hanging on every word. But here's what makes this a tragedy rather than just cruelty. If you had simply treated me with basic human respect tonight, if you had seen past appearances to engage with who I actually am, we might have found a way to save your company together. Your prejudice didn't just hurt me, it cost you everything you thought you valued. As Sage walked toward the exit, accompanied by several of the city's most influential leaders, she passed Devin one last time. He stood completely alone now, abandoned by his former entourage, avoided by potential allies, facing the complete collapse of everything he had built his identity around. The saddest part, she said quietly, so only he could hear, is that this all could have been avoided with a simple lesson most people learn in kindergarten. Treat others the way you want to be treated. Tonight, you showed everyone exactly who you really are, and unfortunately for you, character is destiny.